Welcome to Unmatched Real Talk. Thank you for joining us today, a podcast that dives into real solutions and real talk. Today, I have a special guest, Chris Rodriguez. He's a regional vice president who oversees multiple properties nationwide. He's well known in the industry for driving operations with excellence and keeping resident experience front line. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Unmatched Real Talk.
Thank you, Yesenia. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what brought you here.
Certainly. So I've been in property management already for about 20 years. I'm currently a regional vice president with Richman Property Services. I started with them about 2 years ago. And prior to that, I was a vice president of property management for a nonprofit in Chicago. And then prior to that, I was a regional vice president for another property management company that specialized in third-party property management. So currently, I've overseen up to a portfolio of 8,000 units. Currently, I'm overseeing a team of 4 regional managers, a regional maintenance supervisor, and about 4,000 units, mostly affordable, in the South Florida area. And I do have one property in Richmond, Virginia, and I recently had a property in San Antonio, Texas.
Impressive.
That I helped off board.
Impressive.
Thank you.
Congratulations up to now on your journey.
Thank
Impressive. So diving into portfolios and managing across the portfolio, how do you ensure the constant high quality on resident experience?
So one thing that I really like about in Richmond, what we're utilizing to as a metric for resident satisfaction is we use Satisfax. The resident surveys and so, but a lot of companies use them, and it's just something that it's in the background and occasionally gets looked at, or maybe they look at it, but they don't do anything with it. What I like about how we're doing it at Richmond is that it is built into the key performance indicators for not only the maintenance, the property managers, the regional managers, and even myself. We have a performance metric that we have to meet 4.5% average rating on all of the surveys or better. And it's tied into quarterly awards, annual awards, and recognition. So it gives a little more weight and importance, even though I know it's important and many people know it's important. Having that extra, it be tied into the recognition that the staff are receiving, makes it more in the front line. Because when you're in property management, especially our field staff on site, everything is competing for their attention, so it's like, resident issues, corporate, whatever it's on corporate's list.
How can we run it fast?
Occupancy, delinquency, legal issues, everything is competing for the property manager's time. And so, unfortunately, the resident satisfaction could sometimes fall to the background. This helps it constantly be something that is given attention to and monitored.
I love that. What metrics of feedback do you rely on the most out of all that you outlined to measure your resident satisfaction? So would you say it's your KPIs, or would you say it's more on the system side?
So within the KPIs is the questions that the surveys are asking.
Okay.
So those are the main things. It's asking, so residents will receive a survey for every work order. How was that work? Were they happy with the work order? Mm-hmm. Because, back in the day, you would have to call from the office, would cut the call and say, hey, after the work order, were you happy? And, sometimes, the staff wouldn't call.
Correct.
Or they would say they called, they didn't. Or,
the lack of follow-up.
Yeah. So it wasn't, and then sometimes it would end there.
Correct.
So having the surveys occurring after the work orders, and they come to me as a regional VP, they come to the regional manager, they go to the manager. So everybody's seeing how these work orders, these surveys are being responded to.
Okay.
So you get one, the residents get one after a work order. They get one 60 days prior to their renewal. Mm-hmm. So to kind of say if they plan on renewing or not, and then why, and then also if we have, let's say, a prospect come in, and the staff filled in the guest card. All the information is in CRM or in the system. And so, and they toured the property, they will receive a survey. How did their property tour go? And then they can, it gives them a way to provide honest feedback that we all could see. And so those are very helpful. And then the types of questions that it asks is, like, for example, with the work order, which is like the one that to me really gauges, the type of service that
Right.
they're receiving, is like, how was the office staff? How did they take that work order? How did the maintenance staff, how fast was it done? Was it done properly? Did you have to call back? And they could rate it on a scale of 1 to 5. And then it gives like area where they can express like, any loose
Any
issues, like,
comments.
oh, they made a mess, or, oh, they were great. Joe was fantastic.
Okay.
And we read them. So
Okay. I think
it
that's
helps.
great because I think, that keeps us understanding what could we do differently? How can we push, more and kind of put a new level, set a new benchmark. And, you're also motivating the team through recognition once those
Yeah.
KPIs are met and with whatever percentages they're met,
Exactly.
So I think that's a great tool.
Yeah,
Absolutely
and
a great
to
tool.
add to it also every employee has goals that are monitored and tracked on a quarterly basis. So one of the goals is that KPI, that 4.5 or better. So, and it's all tied together. It's tied into that recognition. It's tied into their goals. And so when we have, like, I meet with my regional managers quarterly and I review. A lot of my regional managers, I happen to have meet that goal. And so so it's not an area where I'm having particular issues in, but we go over, we see, all of the properties are achieve that average score of 4.5. And then if there is a property that's not at that 4.5, then we drill down and just see, okay, like let's review some of the recent surveys and see what specifically. Is it in the work order area?
Right.
Is it in that lease renewal? Because it could be maintenance, could be great, but it could be that the property may have, capital issues, issues like with projects that maybe need to be done, to improve resident satisfaction with the building. It could just be different things. So it helps us hone in on, okay, what is it that's not helping this property achieve that 4.5?
That's
And
great.
so then we identify those things and then put a plan together to try to get that improvement. And then, of course, we always have to engage the residents who participate, because a lot of people get surveys from everywhere.
I think what ends up happening is, residents tend to be very fast to respond when something is to their inconvenience
Yeah.
or it wasn't met to their expectation. But then sometimes
The good
it's very
news.
few that come back and move out of their ways, to kind of send that comment or
Yeah.
that survey or that small note, that email for leadership and even the on-site team to know, that kudos to the team, they did a great job. So I think that's a great way. I also, listening to you express the breakdown of that process and how you utilize that survey and that data, it's really important to understand that the data it drives so many different areas.
Yes, it does.
Because you just touched on the renewals, right? So it's known that a lot of people, yes, they might move because maybe they purchased a home or maybe they're relocating, but there is a high percentage that residents move out of these properties because they're not happy with either the maintenance or they're not happy with the property management
Yeah, the
team.
quality.
And it's something with the quality that fell through the cracks. And how can you change that experience? So that data, sending it so earlier on, you could pick point and it gives you gives you the ability to read that and be able to say, okay, well, maybe we could reach out to this person and have a chance to change their experience.
Exactly.
And you could gain that renewal and keep the resident
Yeah.
satisfaction, as as you do it excellently, driving it in the front line.
Yes, because it could be very simple as, you're 60 days on and they could be complaining. Maybe they've been in that apartment already for 15 years or
Yep.
10 years. And they're like, I've been here for 10 years and, I could use, touch up paint or
Exactly.
carpet cleaning or something.
That's it.
Just you never know. It,
Yep.
it might not be that big of an ask,
That's
and
right.
it just hasn't been communicated.
That's
And so
right.
then they put it on the survey, and it could catch our attention, and we could say, hey, you know what? Let's reach out to this resident. Let's see what they need. Because they've been here for 10, 15 years. They like living
They
here.
like
They
living
probably don't
there,
want to go,
and
but
that's
they
their
probably,
home.
yeah, they
I
probably
agree.
just want a little spruce up in
Yep.
their apartment. Let's give it to them. It's a lot cheaper than turning the unit. And
Exactly.
sometimes the managers, they don't think about it that way. And so
And
it's,
I think that's where your leadership
yeah.
comes in, and you kind of, shift that mindset for them and allow them to shift that way.
Yeah.
So, how would you balance, and I think you already kind of touched on this, but how do you balance your corporate goals with the unique needs of each local market? So, because you do have, different regions, how would you say that works out in balancing those corporate goals throughout the markets or throughout the
Well,
regions?
I think you have to be, it's a tough one. That's a
Yeah.
very tough one. Like, for
It's
example,
not a small task.
I have, my properties that are down like here, West Palm Beach, Miami. I have a mostly affordable portfolio.
Okay.
So people, they're tax credits properties. So there's, low income rents. So they tend to be a little more accessible, but you have to have up to a certain amount of money, income that the residents can have to qualify.
Okay.
So, Miami, West Palm, Naples, there's high demand. I mean, no matter how you do it, how you look at it, there's a high demand.
Yes.
And so it
Agreed.
doesn't mean that we there isn't an urgency to give good service, because we need every resident, we need every resident that qualifies to be happy with their apartment. But right now, Melbourne, Titusville area I've had a lot of difficulty.
Okay.
Not so much now Melbourne. Things have gotten better in Melbourne, but I'm having a lot of trouble in Titusville. And it's not a heavily populated area. And so then the income, there's very high earners that are in SpaceX and like the NASA and all of that, the space area. Those people don't qualify to live in my apartments. And then you have the much lower income people that are maybe a cashier at a fast food or something
Right.
like that. They're making $12 an hour. Those people don't meet our minimum income requirements, because
So
our
they
one
don't fall in the
bedroom,
threshold.
yeah, our one bedroom might be $1,200. A two bedroom might be $1,300, $1,400,
And they're still coming up short.
and they're still coming up short,
Right.
because there would be like 45% rent to income ratio, and that puts some rent burden even for that. Like they need something
Absolutely.
even lower.
Yep.
That might be like 900 to 1,000 in that lower income, and so that particular market, I'm having a difficult time,
Okay.
and so we've had to become more stringent with that minimum income. And so where it's like, I would love to just be like, we're going to have to, do it 45% to get people in. It just means, so the corporate objective is we have a like 38%, the maximum that we can take is 38% rent to income ratio.
Correct.
And so we can't take higher than that to qualify. And then there's an income limit that's already set by the housing program. So it can leave a window of about $4,000 to $5,000 in a year. Like maybe you have to make between 30 and 35,000. Let's
Yep.
say,
And that's
for
it.
example.
And you
So
can't-
you have a very small window of people that qualify, but they're out there. And what does that mean? To balance it out, that just means we have to meet these obligations, because this rent to income is put into place to avoid evictions.
Yeah.
If we have rent burdened households, they cannot pay their rent.
That's right.
And the moment that they slip up a little bit, they're going to fall back on their rent.
Yep.
And then we're going to have to file eviction, which we never want to evict a resident.
That's right.
We want all our residents to move in and be there. If they move out, it's for like what you said, buy a house, move up to something better,
Yep. And it's funny that you say that, because I know that in the past, especially during COVID times, we rolled out, the ERAP and the rental assistance programs. And there was something particular that actually, at that time, it was very interesting, because the president of the company, the co-founder of the company, had actually said, you know what, we're going to give them 3 months, where they're not going to pay the rent, and we're going to put it at the back of their lease. And it was almost like 3 months where they were, not necessarily rent free, but for that time being, they did not, have to disperse the payment. They didn't have to make the payment. And then it was added to the back of their lease. And it's funny that you say that, because some of those folks obviously couldn't get back on their feet. And when the time came, yeah, you had to file an eviction. And at that time, a lot of times residents feel, as us, as the management team, or representing the owners, yeah, we want to evict you. No, we don't want to evict you. We
nobody,
never want to do that. We never want to go that route. We don't want to have delinquency. We don't want to have to deal with delinquency. So it's the total opposite.
Yeah.
So I think the balancing and the breakdown of everything that you've shared up to now is extremely valuable, because it's right on target. And what you're stating, it's absolutely true. I think that it's almost like my next question, what's your approach to problem solving when you have a property that's underperforming? You just gave that example, and you're kind of finding a way, how can you tweak that? How can you, really help and target the right audience to then not impact, your delinquency and have those evictions?
Well, so for example, kind of going back a little bit to that question, that it's all kind of connected.
Yes.
So like what we did in Titusville is, with evictions, we're always trying to, our property managers are very dedicated to working with the residents to the full extent possible to exhaust whatever resources are available. And whether that is, going out there, finding rental assistance. And I mean, some of the stuff that I see come through is incredible. Well, they'll find these agencies that I've never even heard of, and they have, they got some funding, and they're willing to help, and they'll come and they get them the assistance, and as long as we get that commitment that they're gonna be able to help the resident get back on their feet, then we work with them. So what we did with Titusville was that we had to increase marketing. So the rule, we set the rule that we have to, the 38% is here to stay, because we have to help our residents by not putting them in a situation where they could end up in eviction, by allowing a rent burden resident household to move in, and then they could find themselves in eviction. So we have to help them by being, enforcing this, strictly. But then we have to get out there and market more, because, we rode a very long wave between like the recession, like 2010 till recently, where I mean, literally affordable apartments rented themselves. Where you were your TCO or your CO for like a new construction was 3 months out, and you already had the whole property 100% leased.
You had 100% leased.
All your leases signed.
Plus a waiting list.
Yeah. Leases signed, keys ready to go, deposits paid, and the people just, with the U-Haul trucks, just waiting for you to cut the ribbon and let them in. And, and it hasn't been like that, ever since, coming after COVID and just the last few years, like the last maybe like 2 years, it hasn't been like that. And people in affordable housing are having to market and go out there just as much as the market rate people.
Wow.
And sometimes even more, because we have caps to what I'm finding now, that my market rate properties are having a lot easier of a time. Like my affordable people are preferring people to the market rate properties, because there's no income limits.
There's
no cap
within the criteria.
Yeah.
So then they have to shift over to your other market rate properties.
So the tax credit ones, the affordable ones, are the ones that are, so in some markets, are having a hard time finding qualified people. And so, so how we've done it is we've put together a marketing strategy that works for that area. That is just increasing, using technology, right? Because we'll do a photo shoot, and then we do some like AI generated photos that instead of the old days, you would go to Court Furniture or one of these furniture places, pay a ton of money to furnish an apartment, and then take pictures of it, and then a year or 2 years later, that stuff looks already out of style.
Exactly.
We just now take the picture of the empty apartment, and then they
play with that.
They decorate it, all using AI stuff, and it's incredible.
That's cool.
Very nice stuff.
All right.
And you would never, it doesn't look like it. And so we do fresh photo shoots. we're increasing the marketing platforms. We're having to spend a little bit more money.
A little more
Marketing,
money in the
the
market.
good old fashioned passing out flyers and where your
Visiting the
target,
locals.
where your target
Okay.
marketing, and that has helped a lot. And so now the property is trending now to a much better place than we were a year ago. But the
great.
approach that I take is when with these types of properties, like this property, I visit it on a monthly basis.
Okay.
I walk the vacant units. I want to see what are the prospects coming through the door. What are they seeing? What is the experience that they're getting?
Yep.
And I've had the staff shopped. And I've gotten good shop reports. I'm like, I know it's not the staff. And I've walked the vacant units. I'm very happy with the vacant units, how they look. The maintenance staff is doing a great job on them. The property looks great. And so it's like, I'm like, what's the problem?
And it's funny that you
It's just
say
the
that.
market.
I think it's the market, and then
Yeah.
it's the shift, and I think we're all feeling it. Although,
Yeah.
to your point earlier on, I think it's a very high demand in Miami, and
Yeah.
throughout South Florida. But I think we could all agree that the industry has shifted. We've seen a great shift, and
Yeah.
we're still all struggling to get back to what at some point was considered the norm. Right?
Yeah.
But to your point, I think that's fantastic because you're able to, you're keeping tabs on, okay, what's going on with the staff. Is the staff needing any retraining, any refresheners, and then you're also going out there and you're showing them that you're there, you're physically there, fresh eyes. It's always something new.
Yeah.
And it's always important, whatever you may catch, I don't catch.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. So I think that's absolutely great. So great answer to that question. How do you decide which innovations are worth investing portfolio wide when you're ready to do your wish list or your budgets or, anything that you need to implement?
So, Richmond now, 'cause that's just where I'm at right now.
Okay.
We take a collaborative approach.
Okay.
And so it's, everybody, weighs in from, from on-site staff to regional managers, VPs, maintenance people at all different levels, weigh in on what they need or what's an area that could be lacking and things like that. The resident surveys too, every decision that the company makes, it takes into consideration how will this impact the residents? How will the residents feel about this? And in most cases, anything that we roll out, it's to make the residents better. We have a new maintenance platform that we're testing out now that actually I really like it. And, I have a couple maintenance guys that are testing it out because we're doing like a pilot. And because that's
Super
usually
neat.
how we do it. They do like a small group to see how it works
Okay.
and then expand it. And one of the guys that's doing, this guy does not like change. He's been with the company for maybe like 11 years. He's kind of set in his ways. He pretty much is like, oh,
So that's even more challenging for him.
but he loves it. And
That's great.
He's become the poster child for this
Okay.
for this app because it's just it's very easy to use with the work orders. It notifies the residents. It's very
Fantastic.
intuitive. When they do inspections, they could take pictures. And it's all very easy to use because that's been that type of technology
It's very efficient.
has been
It's
around.
Very efficient.
Yeah, it's been around forever, but most of the apps that I've seen and used, it's clunky. It gets stuck. It doesn't and the signal it loses the signal, then it gets stuck. With this one, even if it doesn't have signal, it like stays temporarily on the memory of the phone. The moment you have that strong enough signal, it'll sync. And that's it, but it's all seamless, and they really like it. So it's
That's
gaining
great.
good
And
momentum.
it's funny that you say that because most of the time, I love our maintenance team. I really do. But
Yeah.
most of the time, you do have those, type of profiles where they've always done it this way. So it's like, why are you
If it's not
changing
broke,
it?
don't fix
If it's exactly, and it's kind of like you got to help them, massage that new, we're going to make it work. We're going to make it happen. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to take us to another spot, but it's great. It's great that
Yeah.
the employees
Yeah.
already seeing that and they're already feeling that great experience.
Yeah.
So kudos to the team on
Yeah,
that.
yeah. To me, it's like if this guy likes it, then then everyone's gonna like it.
Everybody's gonna
But
love it.
one thing that's unique about it, and it kind of goes back to the importance of that resident component.
Yes.
Because in this particular platform, the residents, the way that it's built in, like they get coins.
Okay.
So if they do a work order within a certain amount of time. It gives them like like coins or points or whatever. And so then the platform on a national level, even outside of the company, it's like all of the users that are using this platform, there's like a top 10,
So it
nationwide,
keeps them
and
really
like they're like
motivated.
competing about
Yeah,
over it, and
that's a
then
healthy
yeah.
competition. And that keeps them going. Who has the most coins, you
Yeah.
know?
So I was
I
like,
love it.
okay, all right, great. If that's what
So
it took
talk
to
about something different. There
yeah.
you go.
And it's we actually did a study because we've already had the platform for about a month.
Okay.
And in the 30 days following the pilot, we were looking at the pilot properties. We're completing, I think it's like something like 50% more work orders. So I don't know if it's because they're just generating more work orders or what, but we're getting a lot more work orders entered and more completed. And we're hearing back from the residents, and the feedback that we're getting back from the residents, because the more work orders are being closed, they're completing surveys on, and the surveys are coming
Are
back
coming in
high.
great, and they're
So
coming in high. So now you've got high performing
yeah,
teams, passionate about what they're doing, and you're seeing the results.
yeah.
So, you've got great elements there to put together. So, how do you build and maintain the trust with your regional or property managers?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the best way to, like, when you come in, coming into a new group, like for example with me, I started with Richmond in 2023,
Okay.
and I had an established group of regionals, managers, and everything like that, and I was the new guy, but I'm now overseeing all of them. So so I came in, and when I did my annual review with I report to the president of the company. She brought up something that I hadn't even noticed. She goes, usually when somebody like in your position comes in, you're going to see turnover, because there's just going to be people that are just not going to, they're going to want to go against the grain, and not, the new regime or whatever,
I think it's
and
the adaptability and
yeah,
the flexibility. It's not there
somebody
for
new to
some.
report to and
That's
things like
right.
that. And so
Correct.
she said the ironic thing was that I came in and I didn't have a single person leave. The same
Okay.
exact staff that were there when I started, we're still there up until about a month ago. That I had somebody that I did.
Wow.
There was one person that finally has made a change,
That's made a change.
but it's been pretty much the same team. And she thought that was very impressive that I was able to
That is
come in
impressive.
and work to mold myself to work with the people, and also get them to gently nudge them to work towards these goals that we've been rolling out, and these KPIs and all of this stuff.
It shows a lot about your leadership, and it is impressive because it talks a lot about your leadership and how they've wanted to learn more about you and in trusting you, right? So I think that the way that you built that trust is almost like coming in there and really saying, I'm here to help you,
Exactly.
versus,
Empathy.
empathetic.
Empathy is the
Right.
way that I pretty much,
Yep.
I put myself in their shoes, and I get in the trenches with them whenever I
That's
can,
great.
and they see me there out in the properties with them. I generally don't go to a property if the regional's not there. It has to be then that, the regional just can't be there. And so then, it's already established that I'll go without them, for one reason or another. But for the most part, I'm usually there with the regionals, and, we get in there and we tackle the problems together. And it's not like looking for a gotcha moment or anything like that. It's, let's work on this together. Let's resolve these issues together. And that has, at first it was, everybody says like it took some getting used to, because they haven't been used to having a RVP that's involved with them, and not involved in the sense that it's micromanaged, because nobody has time to micromanage. It's more like supporting, and bringing, not just saying, well, you figure it out. It's saying, no, let's figure it out this way. Let's tackle it this way, and bringing solutions. And if I don't have, and I want to hear if I don't have the best answer, because I don't expect to have the best answer. And
Right.
let's work collaboratively to come up with the best solution.
And
And that's how it's worked.
I think that's great. I really love how you've answered that question. And I think you've touched, several different topics for me that are just very, very important and very passionate, especially in this industry. As we all know, we're always so fast, very fast paced. And I think, on-site teams really need the support, and they need
Yes,
to extend
they
the
do.
support. And, more and more, we're expecting more from the property
That's
managers.
very true.
And, property managers are starting now to act as, to a certain point, as asset managers. And we're trying to have them, kind of be in the middle, right? How can they do both hats to a certain point? And I think with your leadership, you're coming in, you're kind of rolling up your sleeves and you're telling them, there's no difference between you and I. I'm here to help you.
Yes.
I'm here to tackle this with you. And I think that right there is the start of, your trust and just building that all the way up. So
I think it's important that
that's
the
great.
managers know that what's important to them is also important to their regional vice president, and all the way up to the owner of the company.
Exactly.
Like, it's not like, okay, you just got to get out there and do this job and that's it. No, like, you care. If we want the property manager cares, he wants to rent their apartments, wants to collect the rent, and then when they're successful, we want to say, great job,
You want to recognize
you
that.
want to recognize them, but then it's not just about saying, oh, great job. It's also knowing, like, hey, I saw that this household had 3 months of rent, let's just say, that they owed, and you helped them get rental assistance because you helped, went out there and got them rental assistance, and you helped them get back on their feet, and now they haven't been late ever since, or just things like that. Just knowing those other little details. Like, you were, the property had, 5, or even for the maintenance team, like, you had 5 move outs that all happened the same day. So you had now 5 units to turn all at once, and you already planned them ahead of time before they moved out, ordered you already had their supplies ordered, you already had the contractors scheduled, and in a matter of a week and a half, you got 5 units ready. And now, and the leasing team also worked together with you, and they had those units already with approved applications, and we got 5 units turned in record time. Like, it's knowing those details. It's not just like,
great.
oh, you had 5 movements, great. No, it's like knowing that what those little details, and then it makes the staff feel like, oh wow, they really do care. They really do.
That's right.
They really are paying attention.
And it does make a difference. It makes
a difference.
It makes such a difference. So, saying that and talking about that, and you talked a little bit about your strategy and your leadership. How do you identify and develop future leaders within your organization or under your own leadership?
It always, especially now more, because like we're saying, like, on-site teams are being asked to do so much, and it's every time there's new technology, there's always some, it's a bumpy road to roll it out, and they're so busy. But I feel like one of the hardest, and I think you could probably relate to this, one of the hardest jumps is like manager to regional, when you're no longer a site employee and now you're a corporate employee. I've done that jump. And I've done like manager to regional to regional vice president. To me, the hardest one was manager to regional. Because now, especially when you have, your colleagues, you're all, this manager, that manager, and now you're their supervisor.
Yeah.
That sometimes that doesn't go well. And so the way that the advice that I give anybody that I get asked that question a lot is, like, that manager, if you're a manager and you want to be a regional, the best way to do it is work with your regional manager, volunteer to your regional manager, volunteer your time. That's the hardest thing to do, and that's not something that everyone's going to do. Ask even though you might have a full plate as a manager, ask your regional manager how, I see that, I know that this sister property is struggling. Like, can I help you? Like, don't wait to be asked can you help this property? Say, hey, I know that they're struggling. Can I help them? Can I mentor that manager? Can I go over there and see how their units are, if they're having vacancy problems, or and just take that approach. I guarantee you that's the fastest way. Your regional is going to notice, like, wow, this is a superstar.
Yeah.
And then of course, if they deliver. They go and they do it, because it's one thing to say, and then, okay, I'm going to go to that sister property on Tuesday. Then Tuesday comes and they don't go. Well, no, you have to deliver.
And I think to your point, I think when I would say most of us that started this industry, we most of us have started from, leasing consultant all the way through, assistant property manager, then multi-site property manager or senior property manager, and then kind of transition into the regional manager. And to your point, it is difficult because at that point you're overseeing not one or two or three sites, you're overseeing 12 to 18 sites.
Yeah.
And at that point, you've got different characters,
Yeah.
right? And now you're executing, but you're leading the way. You're leading the people. You're managing what needs to be executed, but you're leading your folks. You're leading your team. So at that point, it's almost like you really want to have, the trust. You want to have the communications, and then you want to keep the hands on.
Yeah.
And then how can you close that gap between the corporate goals
Yeah.
and the on-site goals, and have them understand the whys?
They have to understand that because
Because if they don't
they're
understand
not
it,
going to move. They're not going to go anywhere.
they
They're gonna sink.
won't. They won't.
Yeah.
And that's when you start struggling, right? And
Yeah.
you start seeing that the employees start struggling because they don't understand the whys. And then you have to maybe tailor, right, to see how can you really have that effective communication with that employee for them to understand the whys. I don't think it's just about, hey, I need you to have, 5 move-ins this week. I need you to understand why we need to execute
Yeah.
this.
One thing that I always tell anybody when I start working with them, whether it's a manager, or a regional, I say the financials tell you the whole story. Because I initially
right.
started in accounting. I never worked as an assistant manager leasing. I did accounting work and then for property management.
Okay.
But and then I went over to I crossed over to operations. I was in my early 20s and I wanted something a little more exciting. And then it got too exciting.
It got too exciting, huh? That happens very quick.
Yes, yeah. But I tell the regional managers all the time, and the managers, look at the financials, the story before I even go to a property for the first time. I could look at the financials and tell you the whole story.
That's right.
Look at the expenses. I could tell you, okay, they're having trouble renting apartments. I see high vacancy loss. I'm seeing a high temp employee expenses. I see payrolls under budget, but the temp expenses are there, so they're probably having staffing issues. I'm seeing a lot of plumbing. I'm seeing a lot of capital. And I could tell you the whole story, and then I could see if there's debt service, I can tell you, there might be a lot of NOI, but then what happens below the NOI? You're getting into your debt service, and you might have a interest rate that might be changing. It might be a variable interest rate, and now you're having to put more money because interest rates change. Now more money's having to go to interest, and so then you're wondering, well, I see all this NOI. Where's all that money going? Well, you have
This is what
you got to understand the things that happen below the NOI that are the things that the owners are looking at.
That's right.
And then usually when I show them that, and I show them the balance sheet, the cash in the bank, the accounts payable, if let's say we don't have any of this at Richmond, but have been properties where they're like, well, why is the property, why is everything so tight and everything? And I could show them look at your balance sheet. You have 200,000 in open payables, and you have 10,000 in the bank at the end of the month.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
This is where are we trending?
Yeah, so we don't have any of that now. So, but
that's a great example.
But then they kind of you see an aha moment.
Yeah.
This is what the owner is looking at. So if you wanna understand the owners and corporate, you got to think like them.
That's right.
This is what they're looking at.
And once you start understanding the owner's goals, the owner's mindset, why is it that short-term goal or why is it that long-term goal? Then you're able to really manage that asset in such a different way.
Yes.
And then you as a property manager, as the leader, you're able to then somehow communicate that to your other team members. And it's like what you said, it's the moment. It's the moment of, okay, I get this. All right. We solved it. We solved the problem. Now, let's take the course of action. Let's execute it.
Yeah.
And you've got everybody pumping at that point.
Yeah,
so
if they see
that's great.
the vacancy loss, then they when they're seeing the dollar, what that impact really is, like, oh my God, it's really costing this much money. Yes, it is. We could have hired somebody with all this money.
So what changes do you see coming in our industry, in the multifamily operations over the next 5 years?
Well, AI for sure. I mean,
Okay.
It's already kind of here. At Richmond, we're rolling it out right now. AI assistant. And I mean, I think it's great. But, even with that, that, there was some feedback coming in of like, office is closed, our staff have to go home at some point, and so, the office closes, and now, there's no, unless it's a maintenance emergency, there's really no management accessibility to the residents after hours. And so with this AI platform, now that's changed because residents can put in a work order. Even though they could have done that, they always could do that through the portal.
Yeah.
But now with the AI platform, let's say they call it in, the platform will give them the basic troubleshooting. Like if they don't have, power in their kitchen, it'll tell them, well, have you tried resetting the breaker? And if the resident feels comfortable doing that, they might try that. And just like the simple little things that they could do that might resolve the issue before escalating it to maintenance. And it's helped both cut back on maintenance emergencies, and also even during business hours, we're seeing that it's helped cut back on just kind of like calls that, don't necessarily really didn't need to be, dealt with by a person. It was kind of like, maybe they wanted to ask a question about the office hours or directions for the property. Our AI, a virtual agent or virtual employee, is being able to address those things. One of the things that I love the most is that the platform will text message the resident or call them or email them if like they have a balance. And so it is helping with collections. And so like, let's say the platform text messages the resident, says, hey, I noticed you have, $1,000 balance and it's like the 10th of the month. You haven't paid yet. And so let's say the resident texts back like, okay, well, I could bring the money in, on Thursday. And so if Thursday comes around, the platform's connected to Yardi. So it knows that it has access to their ledger. That platform can now say, oh, well, you made a promise that you were going to pay this on Thursday. So now it's Thursday and they didn't pay it. And they're like, you said you were going to come on Thursday. Well, it's Thursday. You haven't paid it yet.
You haven't paid it yet.
So it's like,
Okay. So circling back there, you're touching on operations, you're touching on delinquency.
Oh yeah.
And then you're definitely touching on resident experience once again, I think going back and kind of wrapping this up, it's really the front line, right? And I think that's exercising that. Because you're touching all of those different areas and you're executing and you're giving them real answers, in real time. So I
at
think
the moment, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock
incredible.
At night,
That is incredible. So
but it's funny because we had, we were worried about, when we did the pilot on that, which we had a senior community, because we're like, we don't know how the seniors are going to respond to this, because I don't know how they're going to, they could wrap their head around like this. They're communicating with like a robot. Let's say, well, it's not a real person. And so we listened to the conversations and like we could see the text message exchange. And there was one, I think it's like the record. It's like 45-minute conversation between this little old lady and the AI platform. They were talking about flowers and gardening and everything. I was like, okay, well, good.
Hey, talk about resident experience. So if you could give one piece of advice to multifamily leaders, what would that be?
Well, I kind of touched on it earlier, and that's a very good question. You have to get out into the field. You got to see what your on-site teams are seeing, feeling.
Roll up those sleeves and get out there.
You got to get out there. You got to get out to the properties. Spend some time with them, because if you just think that you can do the job like a VP or a regional VP type of job from behind a desk the whole time,
doesn't work that way.
It's all going to collapse. It's not going to work out. You got to really get out there and give the team some face time. This is a people business.
That's right.
As many robots as we can bring in and all of that, there's always going to be a people aspect of this that's critical, and I can't imagine that will ever go away. So
I agree. I think the foundation of multifamily is always going to be the people, right? And I think it's people first, residents first, property managers first, employees first, leadership first, and keep those operations moving and keep the resident experience front line. And thank you for joining us today.
No, it's been a
great pleasure. You've brought us great advice, great real examples, real solutions, which which is exactly what we want to do in this podcast. So I appreciate you.
No, I
And
appreciate you.
any questions for Chris, please feel free to reach out to him. We'll be making sure to share his info on this video. And thank you once again.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I look forward to coming back again whenever you'd like me
You
to.
got it. Anytime. Thank you. Now, until the next episode, thank you. Bye.